Marshall Hunter. Marshall has the title of the Vice President for the WRHOA, and Marshall is also a specialist with regards to the design guidelines, restrictive covenants, and all of the things that's associated with the Homeowners Association. We're very, very fortunate to have a gentleman like Marshall on our team to help us work through all of these things as we're moving forward. I've spoken about Mariah and what she's helping us with tonight. Mariah is a new member of the board. She jumped on a couple of months ago, and we've just thoroughly enjoyed having Mariah's skill, her enthusiasm, and everything else with it. And I can tell you as a senior person, the technology that some of these folks that are young know is amazing, and it's awesome. I would also like to thank all the other volunteers, the ladies that are at the desk signing in. Barb as well helped with that, so thank you with that. I'd like to thank all the people that were out in the parking lot trying to direct people in to get us all into here tonight. I thank Mike for managing our microphone later on, and I'll describe how that whole process works as we move through here. And again, our goal tonight is to get everyone's questions and comments heard and answered. Whether here in person or those attending via Zoom, we'll be alternating between the two groups. So how we'll work that is we'll take 3 people, have you line up 3 at a time here. We'll get those questions asked and answered, and then we'll connect to the Zoom and we'll allow 3 people in that area to be able to do the same thing. That way we can facilitate both groups with regards to that. We'll have different people on the sides to help you direct. Once you ask your questions, I'll do more explaining of that as we go on. A couple of housekeeping issues. If you need to use the washroom, always important, you have to head all the way back down to the front desk, go to the right. Men's and women's washrooms are right over there. That's number 1. If there's a fire alarm, which we've been to here a few times, never had it, but just in case, you can either exit that door. If you do, be very, very careful, because there's pipes, there's cement, there's uneven grass and all that other good stuff. If the fire happens to be there, then we're going to, through the doors. So just as a safety precaution, let's make sure we follow that. I would ask those that are going to, they're attending in person, to line up on the sides, 3 people deep at a time. Then you'll get to come up to the microphone. Mike will hand it to you. Ask the questions. Just step off to the side, wait for the answers. If you've got a rebuttal, that's okay. You can proceed with that. We'd like people to ask only 1 question at a time, though, and so we can cycle through everybody in this process. If there's time that's available, which I believe there will be, and you've got more questions, just recycle back up and we'll do the same thing. The folks online, you've got 2 possible ways of connecting in. You can use a raise hand feature. And if you do that, Mariah will acknowledge you, and then we'll try and get you on camera and you can ask your question. If that doesn't work, then just raise your hand or put in your question in the Q&A chat or the Q&A, and then Mariah will ask the question and the panelists will answer it from that point there. If for any reason during this meeting you become disconnected, just try clicking back into that link and you should get back in. If not, we are recording the meeting from the Zoom perspective, not from all of this, but whatever goes on Zoom. And we will be posting that on the Wedgewood.ca website for everybody to look at if they weren't able to attend tonight. Your speakers will not be turned off, the best I understand. So just for chatter's sake and all the folks that are on the call, try and mute your computers if you're not talking, and that works the best for you there. And if you don't want to have your face shown to everybody else, mute your camera too, and then we'll go from there. For anyone asking questions or providing comments tonight, we ask that your questions remain respectful, professional, and pertinent to the topics that were being reviewed at the town hall tonight. We would appreciate if you could limit your speaking time to no more than 1 or 2 minutes, which means try to get to your point as fast as you can with it. Sometimes it'll extend longer, and that's okay, but try and get to the point as quick as we can. The panelists will have time to answer it. We'll select whichever of the panelists needs to answer those ones at that particular time. And then there'll be a bit of time for rebuttal or follow-up questions with that. Our goal is to hear from everyone tonight. It's not to limit time, be authoritarian with our rules and regulations. It's about hearing people, but we've got to respect that lots of people have questions. So for someone to monopolize the time, it's not fair for everybody. So we've got to be respectful from that, and we've got to be professional with that. I may, as the moderator, step in if it's dragging on too long and we're not getting to a point. And we may have to use a parking lot method, not that parking lot method, but a parking lot method to write down the question or the concern. And we can always get back to people after that from that whole perspective. It just makes things run much more smoothly. As I said, the town hall will be recorded and placed on the Wedgewood website for future watches. This meeting is not an official WRHO board member meeting. It's a general meeting, so there'll be no motions allowed or brought up during this period. If there are ideas and suggestions, the board can take it back for consideration, but we're not accepting motions at this period. If questions cannot be answered during the town hall because we just don't get to it, we'll try and identify what those questions are and try and get back to you from whichever group the question needs to be answered from. We hope that you find the meeting a good use of your time, informative, and a demonstrating a collaborative approach and a fuller understanding of the surplus school site and the alignment of the groups in Wedgewood working for you on this. So our agenda tonight is, I covered the first part, the opening, the introductions, the meeting purposes, and the meeting protocols. Marshall's going to walk us through survey results and some analysis from that because we just facilitated a survey in June here to get some feedback with it. And there was great information shared. Robert is going to give us an update on the June 13th city meeting that was held, where I believe there were 77 people that attended that meeting with Sarah Hamilton and the host of city folks. And then our next segment, I'm terming it as Let's Talk Strategy moving forward on the Wedgewood centric plan. Liam will be leading that for the most part of it, but it's going to be open where anyone else on the panel may jump in with questions or comments. But the focus is leading the strategy moving forward. That's the focus for this. Then we'll have a Q&A as we're moving through there. So I will explain that. We'll have closing remarks and we'll go from there. So let's begin. Over to you, Marshall.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to quickly go through the survey results. Certainly anybody wants to ask questions more in depth later, we can come back to it. But I just firstly want to thank everybody. It was 222 of the households in Wedgewood of the 491 did respond to our survey. So that's close to 43%. Or closer to 45, and it's a really good response rate. So thank you to everyone who took the time to fill that out, and we're really glad we did because that's information that we wanted to gain. And for those of you who filled it out and saw the survey, we did mention there was a few objectives we had for sending it. First and foremost, from the HOA side, we wanted to know what you, the homeowners, our members, felt about the surplus park school site issue, and the only way we can determine that was from your responses. So that was really our objective number one. Secondly, we want to be able to use the results from that survey to now carry forward in our strategy and whatever lobbying we do to say we have definitive data that represents all of the neighbors. So again, thank you to those who filled those out, much appreciated. And I'll just go through just some of the key points. Those who filled it out, the very first question we asked, we just wanted to know how many people were aware that there is a surplus school site. And for the most part, that was unanimous. It was over 95% were aware of it. The next question asked, though, were you aware that the site was rezoned in 2012 to allow an apartment development? Things dropped off a little bit there because close to 40% of the residents did not know that. That's just a little bit of a segue into the survey that says there are other questions we'd like to answer and go through those. But I think the most important that came out of the survey was we asked, what is your preference for that surplus school site, ignoring that it's zoned for an apartment? What would you prefer to see there? And about 87% of you and all the residents in the neighborhood said nothing, leave it alone, we want it as park. But as a huge resounding message, we hear that, and that is the kind of data we're gonna then be presenting and putting back to the city and to all the elected members of council when it comes time to vote, so they know that we have a very strong collective voice that very close to 90% of all of the residents of Wedgewood say no development on that surface school site. A couple other questions that were important for the HOA. We also asked, would you like the HOA or like to pursue other remedies or other actions? Because we had given you the Shore Jardine report, that was the HOA's sort of starting reference point to get a legal opinion on what could be done. Following that, we asked, what other remedies would you like to see us pursue, or would you like us to pursue? And the answer to that was close to.
It's a tiny bit closer, just temporarily.
So 75% said yes, we want to pursue other remedies, some legal, just other actions we should take. So that was an important message that we heard from the residents. And then the second part of that question was, are you willing to pay extra fees or see HOA dues put towards that effort? And again, almost 2/3, close to 66% of the residents said, yes, we do want that. So those two items, and of course, the answer that close to 90% don't want any development in that surplus school site, led the HOA to pass a motion to fund the alternative, which was in this case, Mr. Kelly's expertise. He had already been retained by the task force. And then we felt it was important enough and certainly important to the residents that funds go towards continuing Mr. Kelly's involvement in this strategy. And so that is exactly what we did. So those were really the outstanding things that came through. Some of the other items, when we asked people what would they prefer to see in the park, the overwhelming answer, they said close to 90% said no development, but there was a very small groups. 5% said seniors housing, 4% thought a school should go there, and 3%, the rest of the residents who responded thought it should be owner-occupied homes. So very, very clearly, the overwhelming voice of Wedgewood is no development. Wedgewood Homeowners Association now hears that loudly from you, and it's verifiable. That's why we did the survey. We wanted to have that kind of empirical data that we could then show to various groups and present that. And really, that's all I wanted to do formally on the survey. There were a few other questions asked later on tonight. If you want to ask specific questions about those responses, I'm certainly happy to go through them. But from the point of moving forward, the biggest item here is that, of course, very vast majority of all Wedgewood homeowners do not want to see any development in that surplus school site. So that's loud and clear. We've heard it. Okay, too late because I'm done. So when I'm asking my questions, I'll talk louder. Sorry if you couldn't.
Maybe stand up some. We will also be just summarizing all of the survey results and publishing it to the 491 homeowners on the website in the days to come. So that's the next part of that. So thank you for that, Marshall. Turn it over to Robert for the latest updates from the city from June 13 or any other interaction that you want to share city-wise. You might have to talk aloud.
Some people just said they're having a tiny hard time hearing, so. Think of it forward.
Do you want to use the mic?
Let's do that. Oh, that would be fun.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, it won't take very long to talk about the June 13th meeting that the city held. Simply because there's not a whole lot to talk about there. For those of you that attended the meeting, you'll be aware that the city simply basically wanted to advise us that they intend to relocate the existing surplus school site location about 40 or 50 feet further to the northeast. And so that was the main purpose of the meeting. I guess a little more detail, in order for the city administration to actually accomplish that relocation, they need to submit a rezoning application for the proposed relocated site. And the submission of that application will trigger kind of a formal process where the public can provide feedback on that proposed relocation. Ultimately, however, city administration intends to hold a public hearing in the fall. And that will be in order to obtain city council approval to rezone that relocated land. Once that relocated land is rezoned, that paves the way for the city essentially to sell the land to a developer. Apparently, they want to sell it for below market value sometime this winter. So the main takeaway there, I believe, is simply the fact that this public hearing is being planned for the fall. We don't know exactly when. Of course, we'll be watching it very closely to see when that's going to be, but we intend to use that public hearing to intervene and assert that the surplus school site is not to be relocated and rezoned, and instead is to remain as permanent municipal reserve land that is park use, recreation use, school use. So I think that's all I have to say about that meeting.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you. I usually don't need that, so that's okay. That was a joke. You're supposed to lie.
He's not good at telling jokes either.
It's a dad joke. Okay, anyway, let's talk strategy. Let's talk about moving forward. So Liam, over to you.
So my name's Liam Kelly. I'm a lawyer, as introduced. I've been on the Strathcona County Subdivision Development Appeal Board. I was chair for 5 years, vice chair for a year, and sitting member for 1 year. Robert approached me probably 4 months ago, and I want to commend the task force and Robert for their level of depth of the investigation. They've made my life much easier in terms of providing an opinion. They've done a ton of work on this. I don't know if Robert actually sleeps. I think it's questionable. What I can tell you is, independently of the HOA, I came to a very similar conclusion. The unfortunate circumstance is that this is a decision that was made in 2012. And it was to change the zoning from municipal reserve on the surplus school site to, I think was then an RM7 or RA7 zoning, which is for multifamily. At the time, it was presented as seniors housing. But as Marshall will indicate, there's really no requirement or designation. It's just an apartment building, and the city can designate whatever it wants in terms of the limitations when it goes to sell those lands as to what it will approve. In 2015, there's a policy that the city council has approved, which is basically to promote accommodations for those who experience, who earn less than the market, okay? And city council has said they want all of these surplus school sites to be considered, instead of seniors housing, to be for market adjusted rental housing or rental accommodation. In my discussion with the city, they're looking at about 80% of market value for the rental rates. Okay, so it's about a 20% discount, which frankly I didn't think was particularly significant, but that's just me. I guess 20 points is 20 points. In 2023, there were further amendments to that, and as many might know, the entire land use bylaw was changed in 2024 as of January 1st. The zoning was municipal reserve under the Municipal Government Act, where a school site that is, so when a developer goes into a neighborhood, approximately 10% of the neighborhood has to be left for municipal reserve and or school sites. If a school board isn't going to use that school site, they have an obligation to give that land back to the city. And then the city has the ability to then do with it as it so chooses. You have an opportunity now, because they want to move the siting, you have an opportunity to go to council. And it's coincidental that they want to do something here that gives you that I'm going to call it a Wedgewood into their decision. Sorry, if you like that jokes, Jim, I know that. Okay. And so the question becomes, first Robert's question was, is there anything we can do legally? Can we bring an action, a statement of claim, a judicial review? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. We're well out of time, okay? Anything we could have done has long passed. And in addition, it's very unlikely that courts will intervene with council decisions. They only do that where there's sort of a misfeasance, if it's done for the wrong reason, like the wrong purpose, if it's done for I don't want to say fraudulent, but bad actors, okay? If there's any planning considerations that council uses to make their decision, it's unlikely to be overturned at judicial review because the judiciary does not want to interfere with the decisions of a legislative body, right? It goes back to social studies 30s, okay? So what can you do? What are you left to do? Well, you're left to do exactly what you're doing, okay? And these are elected officials. And what are elected officials most afraid of? The people not getting reelected. And so there's two ways, I think, that can be very, very effective. And I have been on the losing side of this, as well as on the winning side of these types of advocacy positions, depending on what I'm trying to change. The things that I have seen in all of these cases are that the more people that come out, the more people that reach out, the more people that call, email every single city council over and over and over again at every opportunity, that can be extremely persuasive. And the other thing that I would suggest can be extremely persuasive is a rational argument. The challenge that Wedgewood and Donsdale, frankly, because I do see it as a connected community in some ways, are going to have is that it's a highly affluent community. And so what city council is going to say in first instance is, well, you just don't want poor people in your neighborhood. This is NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And so we have to be extremely cautious about the message that's being sent, okay? It is not anti-poverty. It is not that we want to insulate our community. It is, and so one of the things that we are that I'm strongly suggesting is find out if there is a potential city planner or urban planner, not working for the city, but privately, who will look at all of the neighborhoods in Edmonton and say that this is an underserved community for parkland in the event this surplus school site is developed. Okay? Because I think that could be extremely persuasive. And so in looking at it, Donsdale doesn't have a lot of green space as well. There's 491 houses here, but Donsdale's another 400 houses. And so we need to be creative, and the urban planner needs to be creative and come up with a rational argument to show why it is reasonable to keep this neighborhood. And that it's not just a bunch of rich people trying to insulate themselves from, contaminated. Has anybody seen the Willy Wonka movie? The new one, where the guy throws up when he hears the word poor? Sorry, you should see it, it's a cute movie. Good joke. Marshall said it was a good joke for a lawyer. I love the qualification. So, I mean, if really, ultimately, it's going to come down to a digital media campaign, because every city councilor has Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Threads. The more you can do and get out there, the more voices they can hear. And when it goes to council, every single person needs to be there. Okay? I'm serious. The more bodies you can get, the louder your voice speaks. Okay? And if you can make a rational argument on top of the voting, okay, with an air of reality, that's all it needs. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, it needs an air of reality that can be persuasive. Your first target should be Ms. Hamilton, Councillor Hamilton, because if you don't get Councillor Hamilton on your side, It's gonna be very challenging. That is your resident council. So I strongly urge a collective methodology, or even, you know, an uncollective methodology. Call her, explain how important it is, and be real about it. My daughter is 9 years old. Right now, at this very moment, she's playing soccer on an IMSA field. Okay, we were in Mill Woods yesterday. We're at Millennium Place tonight. This is used by IMSA. Now, I know they want to relocate the soccer field and they want to potentially keep one there. But there were 2 fields being used at Manisa Park in Mill Woods. It's a huge facility. Do the math, look at other playgrounds, look at other parks, and talk to the urban planner. They may have other ideas about how best to communicate that to council. I'm not an urban planner. I just play my TV. That's another joke.
So good to do.
It wasn't very good.
You're on a roll.
The Simpsons. So, in terms of the strategy, I know that Robert has some looking ahead strategy. The task force has some ideas. If you have questions about the legal process, about what municipal reserves are, how they work, I'm happy to provide information, but not legal advice, on that. And if you want to know about judicial review, what the deadlines are, I'm happy to give details. But ultimately, you're left with a political decision, but you've also been given an opportunity, okay, because of this rezoning application, to give council the opportunity to take a pause, okay, and say, in this rare instance, this is the right thing to do, right? But you know, you've got a challenge because this is a very politicized council. They strongly believe that 16% of every neighborhood should be for affordable housing, including Wedgewood, including Donsdale. Where are they going to put that? It is something to consider in terms of when we talk to the urban planner, and I'm happy to assist with that, just to liaise in terms of some brainstorming about how we market the need for the park urban, okay, as an asset of the community. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Robert, and Robert can talk about the task force plan going forward.
Thanks, Liam. Just a couple points before I go through a bit of a look ahead, see where we think we need to go over the coming months. I did want to take a moment to recognize each of you who have been supporting the effort to preserve this space. Your contributions have been very much appreciated over the past 6 months, and I actually believe that the reason the 3 groups are sitting here today together is in large part because of you. So thank you again. Secondly, on behalf of the task force, I just wanted to say that we are looking forward to collaborating with the other groups to ensure that the surplus school site remains as park space. So looking ahead, not going to get into a whole lot of details here. There may be questions later on some of these, which we can discuss. But at a high level, some of our current plans to achieve our objective, which is simply to leave the space as it is. Firstly, obtain like Liam mentioned, we are currently planning to engage a city planner or urban planner. And basically we're looking for an opinion and a report from that planner regarding the impacts of the proposed development, not only to our neighborhood, of course, but also to impacts to the city at large. And as Leah mentioned, there's going to be specific things that we're going to be asking of that planner to make sure that we get a substantive document that we can anchor off of and rely on going forward when we are dealing with the city. Secondly, and these are in no particular order, we're looking at all of this right now in parallel, essentially. We plan to ensure a massive public feedback effort once that web page opens up. for public feedback regarding the rezoning application that I mentioned. We need a lot of people to get in there and make their voices heard at that time. And I'm not too sure when that webpage is going to open up. Whether that's in the coming weeks or maybe in 1 or 2 months, I'm not too sure. But when it does open up, we need to be ready to inundate the city with our reasoning and our rational reasoning as to why this cannot move forward. Kind of along that same vein, we want to look into retaining a digital media consultant. And that is simply in order to amplify our messaging, right? We do have a solid base, not just in Wedgewood, but also in the surrounding neighborhoods. But we have a lot of people through EMSA, for example, soccer kids that aren't in Wedgewood or even the surrounding neighborhoods that are using our park. So how do we bring them in? We make them part of a phone and email campaign over the coming months to amplify our message, right? How do we use Instagram, Facebook? Because there's a lot of people that are going to be like-minded that, you know, live in Millwoods, for example. This, in one sense, this issue is much broader than just Wedgewood. So we want to be tapping into those people throughout the city that want to stand with us and push back. Also, we plan to meet with each councillor and our mayor prior to the fall public hearing. Because ultimately, we need the majority of council to vote against this. How are we going to get there? We think there's a lot of value in just looking these people in the eye, bringing them out to the site, showing them what we actually have here, and talk to them as real people to start to hopefully influence and shift that vote in the fall at the public hearing. So we plan to reach out to all council. We're planning to secure key letters from, you know, more important agencies and people in opposition to residential development. We already have one such letter from MLA Nathan Hip, and we also have a good letter from the EMSA board leadership, again in opposition to what the city is proposing here. So those letters we've got them in hand. We're going to be hoping for several more. Again, just to support our cause. Ultimately, we do intend to have Witten Law represent and advocate for us at the date of the public hearing to kind of put this all together, submit a compelling case for why the city should not be redeveloping in the park in the surplus school setting. So those are kind of some of the key aspects. You know, things are always changing on this, and I'm sure we'll be, as we're working with HOA and the community league over the coming months, we're going to be adjusting to what the city might be doing here and all of that. But at a high level, that's a bit of a snapshot as to where we think we need to go over the coming months.
Good stuff. Thank you, Robert. Okay, we're going to open it up to question and answers. I'm just going to repeat the process we're going to use. So if you got questions inside, you just please line up on either side. We'd like to have just 3 people line up at a time. Then once we've heard from the 3 inside the room, then we'll be switching to the Zoom. So we've already got our 3. Mike's going to be the Mike. Handler.
Mike's going to be Mike.
You didn't get that.
I wasn't listening, sir.
Yeah, so like, just a reminder, if you could speak like loudly and slowly, a couple people online have had some issues.
I don't think loud will be an issue with me.
Okay, and but also for our panel, clearly, slowly, that would be helpful, thanks.
So first of all, thanks to all the efforts, especially Robert, and all the work that he's done so far. I think everybody in the community really appreciates that.
Yeah.
Secondly, my name is Bruce Hillier. I'm Bruce Hillier. I've lived in Wedgewood and Wellswine since 1997. In fact, almost 27-year anniversary, June 13th, 1997. So our kids have grown up, and moved out, grandkids come down and use the park, it's somewhat emotional, and we're attached to that, we don't want to leave because of this. Great summary of the June 13th meeting, by the way, I thought that was bang on. Fully aligned with your strategy, it's still aligned. I guess my question was, it appeared at that meeting that, I think the chap's name was Stewart from the city. He offered up a loophole, if you will, or an opportunity to present at that zoning hearing, a motion. And that some counselor, it sounded like, needed to put forth the motion to be able to say, hey, maybe we want to restrict the size of this stated space, or even just do away with development altogether. What are our plans for actually getting that motion on the table, aside from just showing up on an ask and force, which I will do. And I guess secondly, do we know when that meeting is specifically?
So that meeting isn't scheduled yet. The rezoning hearing isn't scheduled yet. My suggestion is that every time you meet with the counselor, you ask them for their support. I mean, I was in Atlanta last month, and someone said to me, closed mouth don't get fed. Okay, you got to ask for what you want. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. And so every single time, and you're looking for a commitment from a council to table that motion. That's exactly the point. And if we decide that the best thing is for me to represent the community as a whole, get 5 minutes of speaking time, and I speak to council, then that's what I'm going to suggest and ask. But my hope is that the work is already done. Okay,
yeah.
And that we get everybody, if we can have 75, 100 people in the room, you know, that's the way to do it. But ideally, you've already convinced at least one counselor to make that motion. Okay.
I didn't get the impression that Sarah Hamilton was all that convinced that she would be on board with this.
I agree.
Yeah.
You've got your work cut out.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay.
Again, just come close to you. Keep her in the camera.
Can you stand by that little table?
Just right by that little table is perfect there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. My name is Phil Schuchak. I've lived in the neighborhood since 1999. Lived in the city for more than 70 years. I'm wondering, a long shot, if there isn't some role to play or some alliance that could be made with the provincial government on two fronts. One is they've suggested that they don't want the city using money from the federal government to do things unless they pre-approve them. They want to have some say in that. So if there's federal money coming to build this low-cost housing, maybe we could make some representation to them that we're not happy with that, the way the city's going to be spending this money. And that might be a possibility. Two, they've already said that they want to have the ability to recall councillors that they're not happy with because the people aren't happy with them. And also, they may want the ability to repeal bylaws that have been passed by council. So there's two opportunities there. So I think this is the most unpopular council in the history of this city. Okay? The whole thing of that. And this mayor and most of these councillors are going to be tossed next election. So one of our strategies has got to be you delay as much as you can, because this can become an issue for sure in the next civic election.
People have a short memory.
Anyway.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone want to comments?
Not really.
No.
Okay. My only comment is be careful to not alienate the municipal council, city council with the province, because you want municipal council on your side, right? There's a delicate balance here, unfortunately, because they are the decision makers, right? So I know Bill 21, I think it's Bill 21, is that has been out in the public. I would be very surprised to see the provincial government use that against a major city. That would be a significant overreach. Politically. I'd just be surprised. Yes, it's available. It's available for municipalities like Rocky County that are just going berserk. I don't know that it's available for city council, despite how it may feel about it.
Thank you. One more question from the floor, and then we're gonna switch to the Zoom. Just come right up to the speaker, or there. Thank you.
I appreciate what we know in place.
Information.
We got a lawyer. Strategy is the most important thing that we can do. We have to be careful. So I agree with you on the Alberta side, but we don't want to make the city council mad. So what I would try and focus on, if we do have a council, which it sounds like we are going to have to go to council, then it's, you know, the city talks about community, they talk about parks. It's in their documentation, it's on their website. So we just have to reiterate that. Like, why are you,
I think you've got to just keep it there and talking.
why are they doing this? For the benefit of what? Some taxpayer dollars and some federal tax dollars? That's not what we should be thinking about as a city, right? We should be thinking about our communities and our parks. Sorry. Yeah, so that's,
Yes.
truthfully, that's what we need to be thinking about, is how we can come off to city council. I work downtown, I work very closely with city council, so I know how they interact with things. It's about how we play nice, and how we play politics, and how we play strategy. This is what's important. It's not about fighting with city council, because that's not gonna work with this city council. I would love to say, can we delay this until we get a new city council? And the answer is probably gonna be no.
It's not in our hands.
And that's exactly it. So it's how do we reset our minds to focus on that? And that's all I have to say.
Good point. Thank you.
The only thing I think
This does work if we just keep it right close.
the only thing I would say is there is one thing that you can do is if we can provide an urban planning report that is persuasive, they can refer the matter back to administration for a further study. Okay, and so that is an option. If we can't get a counselor to give a motion, we might be able to get a counselor to refer to administration, kick it down the road. That can be effective, because everyone loves to deflect, delay, and procrastinate, as an alternative. I think when we talk about the persuasion, we have to be very careful how we do it. I agree. And it has to be, you know, where are they coming from? What are we competing against? We're competing against the moral, virtue of affordable housing. That's a tough one, right? And so how do you fight that? You fight that with community. I agree. And you fight that with information, but you also fight that with as many people knocking on their door as possible. Using rational arguments and not saying, I just don't want poor people in my neighborhood. Because that will get you a big loss ASAP. Okay?
Okay, Mariah, do you need the mic?
No. Okay, so we have one comment in the chat, comment/question. If the city can be persuaded to change their policy by having hundreds of people show, why can't the city accept a group of representatives? Anyone on the panel wants to answer that, or we'll just leave that one?
What do you mean?
Mariah, can you say who's asking questions, please? I don't have their full names on Zoom. Oh, that's just a comment, you know, it'd be nice for representatives. And now we have someone who would like to speak. So Kayla, you can unmute yourself and see if this works.
I'm Kayla. I've lived in the community since 2020, so new blood compared to most of the people here. I guess my biggest concern is, where are the funds coming for this? And like, what is the end goal? Because like most people, like, I don't want to be increasing our HOA dues. I don't want to be calling on a special assessment? Like, what's the end goal here, and where do we draw the line of how much money is being spent on this?
Okay, thanks, Kayla. We're just gonna get someone to speak on that right now.
Yeah, I can speak to that for a little bit here, and someone else may want to chime in as well. When this came across my radar, a lot of our radar in December, about 7 or 8 months ago, I guess the thing that struck me most about the whole business was the injustice of it all, right? And I appreciate Liam coming out here and talking about the legal side of things and what happened in 2012. That's all good. He needs to say that, right? We're paying him to say what he thinks. That doesn't make what happened in 2012 right. And so the inherent injustice of it all brought me into this fight, and a lot of other people into this fight. And we decided early on that we needed to raise funds, and we needed to do what we could to turn this aside. And that is what we have done, right? There have been a lot of people from this community that have given funds to this effort. We have been very much aware of the need to steward those funds in a proper way and not just throw money around. And so we have done that, right? We have tried to support Liam to keep his costs down, for example. What is the objective here? I think the objective is very plain, right? The objective is to have council vote against residential development in the park, period. It's a very simple objective. How we get there and how much money we have to spend to get there, that remains to be seen. But I will say the task force is encouraged that we have now joined forces with the HOA and the community league. I don't think anyone's really been talking about increasing HOA fees to finance this. Maybe there is room to discuss that down the road, but I think Marshall did make it clear, right? The survey did come in, and the majority of the people in this neighborhood did support some form of funding to push back here.
I would like to hear from the HOA on this matter.
What, pardon me?
I think she said she wants to hear from the HOA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Robert's really just summarized what we said earlier, and I agree. We did hear the survey results, particularly the answer that we want other action to be taken, and that 2/3 of the entire population of Wedgewood were willing to spend additional funds beyond just their homeowner dues. So we're not in a position where we're asking for that. At the moment, we have approved expenditure from the HOA funds to continue to hire Mr. Kelly. We don't know where it's going to go. We want to develop a strategy. Once we get to that point and can quantify things, we can take that back and determine if more funds should be spent. But we were very clear. The HOA didn't jump into this and wanted with sort of the desire to spend money until we really knew what the neighborhood wanted. So now that we've heard that from the survey, we did allocate some funds. We are hiring Mr. Kelly beyond what the task force had done, and we'll continue to do that. So when something else comes up, we have an actual budget for whatever approach we're taking. If there's funds required, that would be considered again by the agency.
How transparent, like, how can I see how transparent the funds are and tracking that? And will we have a voice in?
Yeah, sorry, Kayla, could you just restart what you said there? Everyone was clapping, so we didn't quite hear you.
Okay, how will we be able to see how these funds are being spent and what the budget is, and what's the transparency going to look like for this?
That's a good question. I think because this new effort to align and collaborate with the 3 groups is just a very recent one, those details haven't been worked out, and they need to. Right? The task force has been managing a budget on this And again, we've been doing it in what we believe is a very honorable way. And our books are open to anyone who wants to ask how much we've spent to date and how much has been given. That's not a problem at all. But now the transition to work with the other groups and to look at these go forward initiatives, price out these things and see where this is all going. That all needs to be done here going forward. I don't think there's going to be any problem with being fully transparent on any of those things.
Great, thank you, Kayla. So we're gonna move on to Connie online as well. That's my third guy. Sorry, Connie, could you unmute yourself, please, and ask your question?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, you can go.
Okay, just sorry. I've got two devices going because I'm finding that the sound is very poor. So I guess two things. The first thing is I was wondering, what we can do to engage other communities, particularly Donsdale, because they are our neighbors. And, I'd really like to see us just like go full force at getting their involvement and participation because they are our neighbors and we do share this space. But I guess my other question is, and maybe it's for legal, is do you think it's advisable that we get the media involved? And then secondly, my other question is regarding HOA fees. And I don't understand how affordable housing unit put in our neighborhood can be exempt from HOA fees. And if they move into this neighborhood and this new affordable housing unit, they're going to be enjoying our amenities in our park, what's remaining. And we have to pay HOA fees. Why do they not have to pay HOA fees?
So with respect to your question on the media, sure. I mean, if you can get the media involved and you can spin it properly, you have to be very careful. Again, because if the media, and I don't want to sound like a MAGA, goofball, but MSM is often on the side of affordable housing. So you have to be very, very cautious about how you get this message out, because you're going up against a morally virtuous ideal here, right? Nobody wants to look like you're being prejudiced, right? And we just, so I would caution how that, I would be very careful, is what I would say. If someone in the group has a connection with the media and someone you trust and you think it's, to use the colloquialism, a safe space, absolutely. The more you can get your message out, the better. But I would first suggest that you have a rational basis. I do think the emotional basis, the connection to the playground, the grandkids, the EMSA, the soccer, all of that is absolutely critical. That messaging is critical. But that messaging loses against morality and the feelings of moral virtuousness, unless you have hundreds of people who show up. Okay, so but in my view, you need both. You need the rational basis, which says this park is serving a greater community and will be underserviced. The community will be underserviced if it's taken away. And use their own data against them. They have a huge, data set on counts in the city. With respect to the HOA, I think I'm going to pass the mic to Marshall and he can answer that question.
Thank you. I don't want to dwell too much on that because that's already going down the path of there's development, should they pay fees? But the short and simple answer is absolutely any housing in our neighborhood should be paying HOA dues. It should be bound by certain elements of design guidelines as well, but that's an argument in for a later day. I think for now, we're just saying, what, there's no development, but we all agree 100%. any resident in this neighborhood should be taking dues to utilize our enhanced park, because we have many amenities that have been paid for by your dues and through the community fund. So the fairness is anybody who lives here and enjoys it should be contributing.
Thank you. Okay, let's move back to the floor.
Hi, thank you. My name is Denise. I have lived in this community since 1996. I have to think about that. Sorry, right here.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things. One, the municipal reserve piece is a part that's very interesting to me and has been for a while. I think I brought that up a while ago. Particularly when I read the NGA, it speaks about the province being the one that has the right to take control, to remove the MR. That the city has to apply to the province to remove MR status. There's a form they have to fill out in section 264.
It's already done.
No,
Yeah.
I thought it was already still MR land.
It's actually zoned both. It's already done. They just need to do the paper.
So when they're doing that, they have to demonstrate appropriate public input. So I think going to the meetings and making sure we're heard is really important.
100%.
The other thing, just in terms of the amount of park space in our community, I think we have to be really careful about the words choices we make. We should be calling it the active recreation space. I worked with the department for years. Active recreation space is very different than park space because they will look at the ravine and they will say our neighborhood is well served by park space, by green space. So just using that kind of terminology, just to be very careful about it. So it's not really.
It's a great point.
Thank you. Any comments at all?
It's a great point. Yeah. It's an excellent point.
My name is Carol Ivanzer. I've lived in the community for over 30 years. I want to first thank everybody for all of their work. The HOA, Robert, the community. I think we had to stand and divided fall. I also want to thank Kayla for her question about the homeowner association fees and the transparency. And because I've been a member of this community for over 30 years, and most of that has been working with the HOA, I want to just say, rest assured, Kayla, there is nobody more transparent and more upfront with more integrity than our volunteers on our homeowners association.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm listening to the legal expert. I think that's good advice. You know, you don't want to be seen as being a elitist neighborhood. You're against low-cost housing. But I think this issue is really not about low-cost housing. What it's really about is taking green space and putting up an apartment block on it. Now, I've lived in this city, I told you, for over 70 years. Show me one other place where we've taken green space apart and put up an apartment block on it, like Joni Mitchell said, Cave Paradise. Okay, if this city really wanted to build affordable housing, there are 4 great locations I can give you. Blackford Field, which has been a big disappointment. Why not put some low-cost housing there? 2, the old racetrack and the old horse barns are going to be torn down. In fact, what they want to do is increase the size of Gordon Park. That's one of the things. But also, why can't there be a whole bunch of low-cost housing there? How about the old Coliseum that they're tearing down? You think they're going to put a park there? I doubt it. And the last area is the quarters downtown. That area between 95th and 97th Street downtown has been torn down and vacant for 30 or 40 years, waiting for development. How about putting low-cost housing there? Seems like a perfectly good alternative to me. So I think what we're really faced with here is, let's stop this putting up apartment blocks on green space. In fact, what the city's done Think about Beaver Hills Park downtown. They built that park on Jasper Avenue, 4th to 5th Street. They also want to build a new park right in behind there on 106th and 107th Street. So they're in the business of building parks, not taking parks and putting apartment blocks on. That's not what the city should be doing. Thank you.
Any comments? Yeah. Do we have any questions?
Oh, I mean. The only thing I would say to that is, this surplus school site is one of 11 surplus school sites that were given back to the city. And they're all designated for affordable housing. So to quote Tony Mitchell, they are precisely doing what you're suggesting, and they're doing it with their eyes wide open and their moral virtue high. So while I appreciate your passionate advocacy, and I think it's important that we have that energy, it's also really important that we look at the data, because if you present, and this is why I say we have to be careful, don't want to dissuade the passion and people coming out and talking about it, but the messaging can be undermined very easily if we're not careful. Okay.
Phil, to your point, there's a sense, absolutely, I agree with you. This is not about affordability. The city is going to keep trying to make it about affordability, but it's not. It's like you say, a 10-year-old understands that this is about the loss of the park and the majority of our recreational space. So that is what we do need to keep hammering on. We do not, I believe we don't want to get into it, but that on affordability and, you know, these socialist type of ideas that are kind of critics, kind of stuff, whatever, right? We want our park. So that is the emphasis. How do we keep it there?
Our active recreation space. That's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just, Mariah, I think we have one comment.
Yeah, so Henry would just like to say he agrees that under no circumstances should they be able to not pay HOA fees if there was development. And then there is one other, Connie has her hand up again. Sure. Okay, Connie, you can unmute yourself.
I guess from the last meeting, I was just, a point was made about what would be remaining of our park if this affordable housing unit went up. And the point was you can't count that reservoir that we have. So when you look at what the unit is that they're putting in as far as the space that it's going to take, we got the park where the kids play, but then the rest of it is useless. Like the reservoir, you can't do anything there. Is there something, I guess, that within our community standards as far as the city's concerned, that we should have a certain amount of green space available for, you know, soccer fields or kids to play in or whatever? Because I mean, there's not going to be anything left if they put this affordable housing unit in.
Yeah, this is it, Connie. You're hitting the nail on the head. And we're all hoping very much that a proper urban planner is going to be able to come out here, take a look at the site, see what's being proposed, and be able to properly communicate why this is, you know, going against the city's own guidelines regarding park space, roll out and quantify the impacts to our community and beyond, and help us build that case for why this is crazy.
Robert, can you confirm if the reservoir space?
Sorry.
What's right on top of us?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I know that's what she wants to know. Is it included that?
Sure. I prefer if we stay in a structure, guys. Yeah, you could come up and ask on the mic if you like.
Yeah, sorry, it's just because we're doing hybrid, you know, people on Zoom, so we appreciate it.
You can just come up and ask your question and use the mic so everybody can hear you. And
So just to back on the question from Connie, because I think it's important, is that reservoir space actually included in the calculation of the park? No. So it's a moot point, it's not really an argument anymore, and I think that's really important thing to clear up for everybody, so that we do know if the reservoir is not included. And I know you guys have a lot of stats, and the city has stats, like unfortunately, we're in a really crappy position because although it looks like we don't have a lot of park space next to comparing the other neighborhoods in the school surplus, if you actually look at the data that says per person, we're pretty high on the list.
For
So,
for the municipal, for the school surplus sites.
yeah.
We haven't looked at.
The community at large. So that's kind of where I'm rounding into, thank you, is that, you know, they're gonna fight us with the data that they're putting in front of us that is playing us against other communities that are going through this. So we need to go broader and look at communities that maybe even have been recently put through this, as well as communities all over the city, and talking about that, it's called the recreational active space. I love that, you're right, it's really, language is super important. Anyway, sorry, I just didn't want to waste my one question on that.
No, it's good, thanks.
I'll stand back.
We just want to make sure we get this done right, though. So, does that close that off?
Yeah.
Yep. We
Okay.
do not have any other hands online.
Okay, good stuff. Your turn.
Armin Reixitis, I've lived in the community for oh, sorry. So thanks. Armin Reixitis, I've lived in the community for over 30 years. And my question is, why doesn't the homeowners association put in an application to downzone the site from RA7 back to AP? And I think that solves two problems. Number one is then you're not dependent on a motion, which is not likely to come from our counselor. And secondly, it puts before council the issue of the downzoning and provides the platform for highlighting the importance of this space. I think there's been an increased use of the parks, particularly after the pandemic. It's too bad that we don't have a lot of photographs and that kind of thing, but I think that could be sourced. And yeah, so I think that's the way to go, is to put that application.
Thank you. Question, response?
I guess my question would be, how would you do that if you're not the owner?
You don't have to.
Well, so just a motion from the floor,
No, but
an application.
go down to City
by-
Hall or down to the planning department and put an application and put it on the site. I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion?
Here, just let these guys finish their little discussion here. And then we'll definitely get to
We'll look into it. I think it's an interesting idea. My immediate reaction is that there's some challenges, but it's certainly to love it.
Okay, good stuff.
Okay, the other point I'd like to make is, when you look at the disposal of municipal reserve, the proceeds from the sale of those municipal reserves do not go towards affordable housing. They go to the acquisition of additional park space, probably elsewhere in the city. So there's no connection between affordable housing and that particular park space. That's not a boom that makes that affordable housing more affordable.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I recommend you run for councilor.
Okay, another question, nothing from Bill?
Oh, we're good.
No,
I left, yeah.
What's up here by the desk?
Thank you so much for everyone for facilitating this to make this happen. I actually just had a quick comment. One was that with Robert, prior to reaching out to an urban planner, I think you have competent people to first get advice with, which is WRHOA, Arvin, and also my father, Mohammed Saeed. So I think first meet these guys, because my dad was the senior development officer for the city of Edmonton for 35 years. Armin as well has been someone that my dad has spoken in Marshall, and he's obviously a superstar as well. So I think collectively, and all of the guys actually live in Witherspoon, Armin and Ed and Marshall, so we got a lot of knowledge on hand. And I think with that, then after that, move forward on getting an urban plan or whatever the case may be, and move forward from that. For my other question just was that in reference of the rezoning, was there an actual application of feedback when it went from MR to RA7? Because maybe in 2012 that did happen, but if it didn't happen, then does that allow us to have an argument in reference of the statute of limitations that we weren't informed properly?
No,
So,
I mean, basically, it's more than 10 years.
but isn't it also that it's you knew or ought to have known, but if we knew or not ought to have known at that time, then.
Well, you ought to have known.
But how would we if they didn't do that process properly? That's just my
Then you
question.
would have known that they hadn't done that process properly. My point is, it's, first of all, it would be horribly expensive to try to launch a campaign, a lawsuit like that. Like $100,000
Yeah.
as a starting point, okay, in legal fees. I don't think anyone here wants to spend that money. Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, it would be very, very unlikely to be successful. I wasn't here in 2012. I understand Marshall was. I believe the community was consulted, did speak to it, and it was passed regardless of the community's representations. So, I mean, factually, I'm not sure if there was.
I mean, I was overseas at that time frame, so.
But we were present at council when they made the decision. So all of us in opposition heard the decision in front of us in real time. So we were certainly aware of it. Sure, there might have been an opportunity to challenge it legally, but as Liam said, the opportunity doesn't guarantee success.
Yeah.
And it has to be that they failed in law, and not that we didn't like the decision. And it's just very, very unlikely that would have been successful. So we were aware of it, so there's not a time, but that same hearing, that same type of public hearing is gonna take place in a few months. It's not for the whole site, it's more just because we're tweaking some edges, but it's a hearing on the whole site, on the whole idea of changing it to allow this affordable housing or housing of any kind to take place. So that's the opportunity. We have to be there when there's a public forum and we're all in front of the decision makers. But before then, as Liam said, and Robert, we really need to be, this can't be a surprise when we get to council. They all have to know that Wedgewood is coming and be prepared, not that I've never heard of this issue because their councillor Sarah didn't think it was important enough to tell us. So we didn't know. We have to be the voice. So they all here, including the mayor, not just the councillors.
Sure, fair enough. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Oh, Robert, sorry.
I just wanted to make a quick comment there. Thank you for that advice on the planning. And to be fully transparent, the task force hasn't reached out for proposals on the planning study. We have not committed any funds to this. Now that we're getting involved with the HOA and yeah, Armin, your father, it makes perfect sense in my mind to come together with a bit of a hit team on that, confirm what exactly we need, right? Because we all know it's easy to spend money on consultants, right? They like our money. So the trick is, of course, to box in that scope of work. What do we need from them? Do that for us for X amount, and then we've got it.
So parting words from my wife as I was leaving out the front door was, Armin, you're retired.
Armin, you were retired. You were retired.
Ryan's got two questions, I think.
Yeah, so just two things from the chat now. One of them I think is actually very interesting as perhaps something tangible we can ask of Sarah Hamilton is that in the maps that she's producing on her web space, or sorry, not show the dry pond as like the same coding as the green space, perhaps make it a different color to make it clear to people who are looking at these maps that it is something different. So I think that we could probably ask that of her. And then, that was the green, so thanks, Marie. And, next we've got, what became of the assessment done for land development? I don't know if someone wants to speak specifically on that.
Oh, was it the one city, was
Sorry.
the one city bid?
Yeah,
Marina, are you referring to the site feasibility assessment? You can unmute yourself first. In case you are, you haven't responded, but I did receive an email from the city. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if you are talking in regards to technical assessment, the community has requested those documents from Sarah, as well as, the city of Line Division, and we hope to hear back from them in about a month's time or so. At that point, when it's available, we will forward the documentation to the HOA as well as the task.
one more question from the Zoom.
Can we, if acceptable to Wedgewood, work with neighboring communities to propose developing a community building or facility on the site instead and apply to the city for that, either provincial or federal funding? The joint community league instead of building.
Joint, I pass that over to the community for a reply.
We haven't explored it yet, to be very honest with you. The community of Limburg did reach out to us, and I think I'm gonna ask Laura this question right now. Is it feasible, and would you advise us to actually reach out to Limburg? Because, you said something about, I'm gonna look at my notes here, is in this rare instance, right? Because I do believe that the situation that we see in Wedgewood is rare. By incorporating, similar developments, do we muddy our case?
I don't know until I see it, unfortunately. So my point is Donsdale doesn't have a park, right? So that's an easy add, right? Especially if you can show that there's some use of the park by Donsdale residents, then you're not talking about 491 homes, right? And so all of a sudden, the math that we were talking about with showing our per capita usage, all of a sudden, we're not second, we're ninth, right? And so this is where I think there's a two-pronged approach to convincing people. I teach advocacy at the law school. You need the rational element and you need the motivational element. The motivational element is emotion. I'm 100% confident you guys can do that. Okay, from what I've seen in this room. What we need is the rational element. Okay, and the rational element has to be some analysis that we can give to council, that I want every single councillor and the mayor to look at and say, this is a rare exception. Okay, this is not something that other communities can rely on to try and persuade you to change their surplus school site, that it only applies to Wedgewood, and that we're only doing it because it is such an important amenity for not just Wedgewood, but for the surrounding communities, right? That's the pitch. And you get emotional, you can get worked up, but you need the data behind it. And so if your dad and non-retired Arvin can help, and
I don't wanna reflect this, but what you really have to do a recreation plan. Somebody, because it's not only the quantity of open space, it's the quality of open space and the programming that takes place there.
but this is my point, is using someone who has this knowledge can point the task force, the HOA and the community league in that direction to get that data. That's the whole point.
I suggest that you might want to engage with, we've got a planning school now, the University of Alberta. Maybe that's people who need to approach and also have.
Good idea. I think what we've got here is we've got a strategy we can move forward with, using some expertise that resides there. So great. Right up to the standards.
It's still on.
Yeah.
So I just stood up because the gentleman that said, what had happened in 2012. So I was one of those people who were involved when we went to council in 2012, and it was very well organized. There was a lot of people that worked very hard for those rezoning, so they wouldn't rezone for an apartment building, and we made our views very clear. We spent 16 hours, 2 days, 16 hours at city council meeting, and it wasn't just our community, it was other communities, surplus sites. And so there was a lot of rational thought put in, and unfortunately, we only had Karen Ricci, who was on our side, and she was our counselor at the time. Everybody else was not on our side, or any of the communities, and the communities were saying, what we need in our site is this. We don't need an apartment building, we need, maybe they needed senior housing, or maybe they needed a different kind of senior housing. The city was not interested in listening to any of the ideas that were presented. We all came out as being NIMBYs, if I'm saying that right. Yep. And so you do have to be very careful how we go ahead. It is very important that we all show up. And a lot of us had shown up, and we gave, I had to take 2 vacation days to do this, right? Because I was working full time. So there was a lot of people very committed to this. So it is something that everybody needs to get involved, and you need to be willing to put in the time. And a lot of the things I've heard here tonight are the same things we talked about 11 years, 13 years.
Thank you, Phyllis.
So one of the differences for this decision is that it's only Wedgewood that's on the table. It's not 11 surplus school sites that are going to be given back to the city all at once. And so to amplify your voice, I think is going to be easier today than it was in 2012. That's the only thing I would say is there is a bit of a distinction for what it was. I think there was lots and lots of NIMBYism at the time, right?
I think we've got 2 questions or 2 comments.
Yeah, just 2 general comments in the chat about the question of parking for tenants and visitors and how that would work for a development. I just said that we don't have information on the site visibility since we can't really look. And then also there was a concern about garbage collection vehicles entering a multifamily development and where the garbage would be kept for but just comments and questions.
That's important.
Well, the only thing I would say, first of all, now we're going down that path, housing being there, but all those things are regulated in the bylaw. So no different than any other place, garbage is regulated, it has to be screened, it has to be accessed for it, same with parking is regulated. So all of those things aren't so much a concern because now you're arguing about the details of something that's happened. And I think it's a valid question, but I think we really want to be concerned about it's just not happening. But those things I think are controllable. The best news for us actually could be if it was going ahead and a developer asked for a variance. Now they're in for a bigger fight because they've opened up the door to us to appeal. And that's where some of those things come in. But that's down the road. If we've lost this battle and there's housing going in, some of those things could come up. But for now, the message is we're not talking those details because we just want the housing.
Yeah, good stuff. I'll bring the mic to you.
Well, I just wanted to know whether it was solar, okay? I think the one thing you want to make sure is that transportation impact study also includes the parking impact study. Because right now, for the use of that park, you've got cars parked on both sides of the road. And also with the connection to Cameron Heights, you've got a lot of people that park at the end of that park space to access that walking trail.
This may be a question too. I know they promised to do a parking assessment. I don't know if they did. And once we see it, that's exactly the point. I don't know what their criteria was, but it isn't just a parking assessment on Wedgewood Boulevard. There's all kinds of surrounding here that impacts your right people parking on 24th Street, but until we get that, I think that's something we want to look at quite critically and as well the assessment. I don't think it's been done because they promised it to, and I don't think they've delivered it yet. They did mention that at more than, I think, long ago at the town hall, they mentioned it, and then more recently. So that is, those kind of reports are something we want to look at pretty carefully.
I understood it.
Yeah.
But we've seen people have
Okay, anyway, so you guys are just talking about parking and stuff, so I think one thing that we haven't talked about is safety. So I'm a marketing professional, so I've been writing out a lot of things. I think safety is a clutch piece of this, at least I'm hoping, and I'm curious what your opinion is on that, because really the traffic is insane. I don't even think our 30 sign is in the right spot. People look around that corner like it's nobody's business and mowing down people in crosswalks. So just something to consider safety. But my question is, what do you need? So a lot of people are concerned about money. I'm hearing, that's what I'm hearing. And so I know the HOA to this point is just hiring our lovely legal information man, which is awesome. You can get a lot of this through volunteer work. So I've had lots of calls to action like, hey, come out, help us with whatever you can. I think if you can get specific about what you need, like we need city planners, we need somebody that knows this, that knows that, that knows somebody that knows this. If you can put those specifics out to the community, I think we're gonna have a little bit more success recruiting some people, including myself.
During my time at the SDAB in Stark County, safety came up every single time, and traffic came up every single time. Traffic is very, very difficult, because when you actually look at what roads are built to, the specs that roads are built to, it's, everyone would think it's actually crazy, but it's what they're built to. So they can handle thousands of trips an hour, and this might increase them, as I understand, by 40. So I just, again, I would rely on the experts that we have available, the experts that you will consult with to find what's persuasive, okay? If the 30 signs in the wrong place, then you should call the city and do that separately, because that's, yeah, is that dangerous? Yeah. If you think 184th should be developed in any event, because it should be, you should call the city, because it's silly to me that 184th is a rural crescent in the middle of a developed neighborhood. It's bizarre that that was allowed. There's lots of other issues. Again, it's about making sure that that message is refined and that it's supported by the data, because we can dismiss traffic concerns pretty much out of hand on the, like as a development appeal. Okay.
Okay, good stuff. I think we're clear on the chat line. Did you have a question? You were just.
I would just going to ask you
Yep.
my concern is the access coming into it, since you've only one meeting now, and like have they addressed that in regards to fire? So the emergency access, so this is basically once there is possibly a building, I think that's part of the conversation at that point in time, is like we only have one in and out, right? So what does that mean to our community? If a development goes in, and is that part of the conversation to fight it or not?
It's not so much an argument for me now, because we haven't seen anything being proposed. And again, there's regulations that whenever you submit any development, housing, commercial, you need an emergency and a fire route as part of your development permit, you can do it. But I just want to clarify, Wedgewood doesn't only have one way in. We have an access out of Weaver with knockdown bollards, and that is the second emergency access in, so we have to be careful. There's one open passenger route in, but Wedgewood is serviced by 2 emergency ways in. But you're right, that's a concern, and that's something down the road. All we can do is hope a developer doesn't address it properly, and it opens up an avenue of appeal, because going to appeal, I think, might give us more opportunity to feed this than city council, who can easily say it's 12-year-old decision, open up against.
And one just look right on that. Well, it's just for your, it's for your strategy. So we know we're fighting right now for nothing. We want it. We don't want a development, but I think it's really important for us to have a list of the backup. So it's like, okay, if step 1 fails, what's step 2, 3, 4, and you know a ton about this emergency access stuff, like that's one of the things on the list, right? So I think it's important. I think it'll be a really quick turnaround when they make a decision in the fall to putting that property up and to somebody bidding on it. So if we fail, and I know we don't want to, but let's live in the real world. if we fail, I think we gotta have a solid backup plan like right away. So that we can get the best that we want and try and fight it on the back end to this and make it look really unappealing for a developer to buy. So just a little bit of energy there.
Absolutely, appreciate that. Do we have any further on the chat line? No? Okay. Any last questions for anyone? Oh, on, do you want to come up? You can come this way, you can come up through the middle, it's okay. It's okay, just ask the chair. Right here is perfect. Put this right to your mouth and talk as loud as you can.
I'm nervous. I'd like to thank Robert and the members of our HOA. I've been a proud resident of Wedgewood since 1990. I am so proud of my cousin. She worked so hard so that we were able to afford to live here. I guess I'm not a technical person, although I have been receiving emails from the HOA and from you, Robert, and even a phone call. So I really appreciate that. I want to be kept informed. And so, is there any way that I know time is running out for doing this in the fall. So how will you keep us informed? And also, it would help me a lot if I had a list of all the members of city council, so that I can start blasting them with emails, because I don't because I don't know how to get that information. So, but yeah, and so that's being kept informed when we get the digital media person and all of that. Yeah. So I wrote notes on my seat. But anyway, those are my comments. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kathy. Oh, sit next one, sit there. As soon as we open up the middle, we get lots of people. Sit right here, buddy.
I just wonder, listening to our esteemed council here, I was supposed, anyway, doesn't matter. Just a joke. Maybe when it comes time to go to council, if we blitz the neighborhood to get everybody out 95%. So that's my only comment. So that would be very important. That's what I'm doing. And if we get 99% of the people out.
If you could get 1,500 people to go to city council, that would be very persuasive.
How many people we get in there? Yeah. Anyway, that's my favorite.
Thank you. Thank you. What the mic down, Sid? What the mic?
Good way.
Okay, again, last call for questions. Yeah. Sure, if you want to come on up. And...
I'll just stand up.
Okay, hopefully we'll get.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Okay, do we have anything on the Zoom chat line? No. Okay. With that being said, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I know, well, I'm not sure if this is as exciting as Game 6 Oilers and Florida Panthers, but it was good. It was good. I appreciate everybody's feedback. We appreciate your comments and your feedback. Thank you, everybody, for either attending on Zoom. Again, thank you for all your coordination of that. That was awesome. We'd also like to thank you for your patience with the touch mark parking challenges. And I'll reiterate this again. If you're going out through this back door, be safe. If you're going out through the front door, be safe. If you're going through the side door, be safe. Please don't trip on any of the uneven ground or land. It's very important. We will have, if you need your way out, we'll have a few volunteers showing the way out, so we'll have some help with you on that. We ask everyone to stay engaged. Not sure, Kathy, I think you mentioned that. And look for the updates. As we get updates through the HOA, we send them out. They don't stay long in our basket, they go out. If there's something we need to do, we need to do that. We don't want to overfill your emails with that stuff or any stuff, because typically when that happens, people stop looking at the emails. And that's the last thing we want people to do, is stop looking at emails. So it's been very strategic in nature to only send out fewer, that way they're more pertinent for you. But we'll work on a strategy with it. And I do know that the task force has a very good strategy on the social media networks, and they'll continue that. The HOA is not going to go in and take part with the social media networks. It's not a secure place for us to be yet, and it's not a safe place for us to be yet with regards to all of our intelligent and intellectual information, and we're not prepared to go there. We're very glad that we've got almost 31 short, so 460 homeowners with emails. So we're nearly there, and we're hoping to convert those other 31 eventually as well, but that may take a little bit more time with that. So we ask you to stay engaged, keep updated on the future plans. There will be a whole bunch of activity as it comes up, but you know, if everybody's engaged with that as we're moving forward. Just a reminder for everybody, on June 25th at 7 p.m. we are doing our AGM. It will be done via Zoom, and we'd love to see and hear everybody there. So please, show up. I am going to give last word brief, but to the point, folks, to you. So, what's your last words to the group? Yeah,
I will then, Mike. You know, I just like to thank HOA and Robert. That's the most important thing. As a member of this community, we're looking forward to working with this group and getting all of us together.
Nothing to add. Very, very encouraging after 6 months of being in the trenches here to be able to sit in front of you here with these other groups and start to come together as a true community.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to give everyone an update that just passed June. So between the Zoom and the people in the room, just a little under 100 folks are here tonight, which is a really good turnout, and that's really good and encouraging. And I too look forward to working together. And we've got one voice now, and just a matter of getting our message out there to people that matter ultimately, which is voting for the councillors and city council.
Happy